Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the last Afterthoughts episode of Hotel Bar Podcast. This is where we take a look back in the mirror at the previous 3 episodes of our podcast and think about what exactly did I really want to say, right? So joining me is my great friend, Dr. Rick Lee. Rick, what's going on?
How you doing, Charles? I'm all right.
All right, sounds good. My other great friend is Dr. Lee M. Johnson.
Hey, Charles, what's up? What's up?
You know, just doing the do. First day of classes, you can see me dressed all nice. I'm pretty for the people. Because to quote the OJs, you got to get the people, got to give the people what they want. So we're looking at episodes 28, 29, and 30, right? The last 3 episodes of our season. And we are going to talk about episode 28 and episode 28. Our topic was Rick?
Generations.
Thank you, Rick. So since you were in the hot seat for that episode, is there anything you want to clean up?
Yeah, I just don't understand why you all still think they mean something. So if I could take the rest of this episode to convince, no.
To whip you dumb bastards into shape.
Okay, Boomer. You are like Boomer adjacent. So.
I am really close to Boomer. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you both did bring me more than I thought you would have to understanding there is something about generations. They're not quite gerrymandered kinds, but they're also not natural kinds. And so there's something important and they're messy. I just worry about, I mean, I think Lee mentioned that there's a certain kind of flexibility to like exactly who counts and how to characterize them. I just wonder how much flexibility could there be before they're not really helpful.
And if there's so much flexibility that at a certain point, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Right. All right. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Lee, any afterthoughts?
Well, like Rick, I think that was an episode that did not change my mind at all about what I thought coming in. I still think that these are really useful ways of describing people and ways of describing our world. But I will say, interestingly, that Rick convinced me that they are gerrymandered sets. I think maybe I had resisted that description in advance because I thought, like a lot of people think about socially constructed anythings, that because they're socially constructed, they're not real. But they're more important because they're gerrymandered sets, because they are ways of, dividing humanity into meaningful groups, and, according to what we think is meaningful. So yeah, I mean, I do think that one of the things listening back to the episode that I realized, and this, wasn't only in this episode, but it's been in other episodes, is that both Rick and you, Charles, you tend to go further back in history than I do. So both of you, wanted to talk about, generations that might have existed in the late 1800s or the late 1700s. And I think that I really just need to be better about realizing that, the world goes back beyond the 20th century. Of course it does. But I will say to that point that I think that maybe what we realized is that this designation, this way of, this division of humanity has a sort of particular kind of valence now that it might not have had in previous historical epochs. So yeah. What about you, Charles? What do you think?
We had that really, I think, interesting conversation about sort of the experience of a generational consciousness along parallel lines, but the ways in which the experience of race, right, the experience of certain types of pressures within US society may inform or have a particular group of people think about generations in a different way. And also, and I think it became what, for a second, the question was, which is the more dominant sort of identifier for me? Is it being Gen X or is it being African American? And I think that was a really sort of, for me, a powerful thing. I wish we had sort of pursued that, because then you could start thinking about things like alternative sort of historical sort of existences. You can start thinking about alternative historical lineages and lines. And if you're talking generations, then we have to create a whole different sort of set of historical markers and epochs. Like, and I know there have been some interesting sort of African American or historians of African America who've tried to rewrite what an African American history book looks like. And instead of following the dominant beats of mainstream American history, there are different beats, there are different events, there are different sort of inflections that create a whole different system of existence. So I think if I could have continued on with that conversation, it would have been sort of, I mean, it was already an amazingly fascinating and fulfilling conversation. It really was. I had doubts about the generations thing, Rick, from the beginning. I was like, this feels, I don't know, but you proved me sort of wrong, and I really enjoyed it. But I wanted to, in hindsight, I wanted to pursue that conversation, because then it opens up for other sort of identities. Right? What are we thinking about in terms of queer identity along that same type of model? What are we thinking about Jewish identity along that same type of model, right?
Right. And it's interesting, not long after we recorded that, just to exemplify, Charles, what you were just saying, I was reading something about Jesse Jackson, and the article listed him as a member of or belonging to the civil rights generation.
Right.
Which is, that's not Gen X, that's not a boomer, that's not a, so that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move on. Let's move on to episode 29, which was, I believe, my full-throated defense of humanities. So Lee, I know that you had some really sort of engaged sort of points and thoughts about this. Anything else? Any sort of, l'esprit de scalier that you had as you walked behind the purple curtain?
I think that, well, first of all, big humanities, you're welcome. You're now defended. But I think that we did a pretty good job of defending the humanities in at least in my view, in ways that are not the same sorts of defenses that get trotted out all the time. I think that Rick and I were kind of focused on making what in the episode we called an instrumental defense of the humanities. I still think I'm even more convinced that it's important that we invest time and effort in making that kind of instrumentalist defense of the humanities. But I do really appreciate, Charles, you sort of constantly bringing us back to the very thin line between, wanting to make an instrumentalist defense of the humanities for virtuous reasons and just kind of capitulating the whole game to, capitalists and utilitarians. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, on my deathbed, I will defend the intrinsic value of the humanities. But if I'm trying to get majors, I'm going to go with the instrumentalist argument.
All right. I can dig that. Rick?
Yeah, I was thinking along pretty much the same lines that, I mean, as Lee just put it, I began to worry that the instrumental, or what I kept calling the selling out of the humanities, that I think it is necessary, and we haven't done a sufficiently good job at doing it. But as Lee just said, I started worrying after that is then just a capitulation to the structures of capitalism that probably are responsible for destroying or putting the humanities under tremendous pressure that we find them today. I mean, philosophy departments are closing left and right, language departments, and don't even start talking about classics. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a robust classics department these days, except at the Ivy Leagues. So I feel like there is an end to that argument, or a beginning that I was making, that is a capitulation. And I think Charles kept pushing us to come back to both the critical possibilities of the humanities, and then also the much more of the intrinsic value of the humanities as instrumental for a critique of the pressures of capitalism, of white supremacy, and other structures that we need the humanities in order to analyze and critically engage.
What about you, Charles?
Having said all that, I listened.
Charles is ready to sell out now. Having said,
ready to go. I actually just got a huge offer from like Dow Chemical, and they're saying,
and now Charles is running a huge project on
right.
the ethics of chemical pollution.
Right.
He's like, where do I sign?
Right. Chemical companies, it's their planet too. No, what I wanted to say, and first I thank the both of you for indulging me in that conversation. That's a topic that's sort of an itch in the back of my consciousness. So thank you for letting me scratch it a little bit. But having said that, what I feel like I've failed to do, and this is in light of an article I just read in the Boston Review called "The Lost Promise of Black Studies," which is a really brilliant sort of examination of the IBW, which was an independent research sort of office in Atlanta, and it was established by an amazing coterie of scholars, including Vincent Harding. They were trying to think about Black studies as something beyond just fitting into becoming a normative department within the established structure of the academy. And so having read that, I thought, in everything I said about the possibilities of the expansion of the human spirit and the role that humanities can play in that is earnestly and sincerely held. But at the same time, what I failed to do was really talk about the inherently problematic sort of grounding of this whole project within a modern academy called the humanities. And, just like we can be critical of this idea of man or humanity within the construct of a modernist sort of political and social and cultural project, I think we have to be equally critical of what the humanities offers, because then we have to think about what are the ways in which the humanities have been used to block off or limit or suppress other bodies of knowledges and populations that are deserving of that same sort of exploration, or are not seen as having the same possibility of transcendent sort of transcendent growth and expansion. So in my ears, I sound a little overly enthusiastic and too uncritical about the thing in and of itself, right? And that's not to say that these other that these other things aren't credible and aren't worthy of pursuit, but I was out of balance, as it were, with my own critical sort of sensibility.
I still thought it was a great episode, and I'm so glad that I think that it's one of those things. It's kind of like a well, I was going to say a mammogram, but that doesn't really apply to you guys, but it's like something that you should do every couple of years, right? Which is,
breast cancer occurs in men.
Okay, sorry. But I think that, we should periodically take a minute to think, what is the defense? What is my defense of the humanities?
Yeah. I
appreciate the opportunity.
Well, all right. My pleasure. Well, I think that brings this conversation, these afterthoughts, to a conclusion.
No.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Are you just trying to make me mad?
We have to hibernate and get ready for season 3.
But we have one more episode.
We have to talk about robots.
Oh, that's right. Oh shit! I'm so sorry,
Charles. I know that was on purpose. I know that was on purpose. I take back my compliments of your defense.
Lee, it wasn't on purpose. It was a glitch in the algorithm.
It was my organic imperative. The natural thing in me demands that we protect ourselves. But you are so right. We have to talk about episode 30, the final episode of season 2, and we have to talk about robots. All right, Lee, you're in the hot seat now. Do it. Any regrets?
No is the question. I thought it was a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad that we had David Gunkel on. Yes. I think he's absolutely great. I do love his work. hope that everyone visits the episode notes for that episode and look into more of his work. I will say that one thing listening back to it that I wish I had made more clear is that I think when I say, and David says this too, that we're really trying to motivate people to get out ahead of the problems that are coming. And that, for me, that is oftentimes just trying to convince people to take these questions seriously. And, and secondarily, to learn just even a little bit about emerging technologies so that they can understand all of the implications of these kinds of questions. But I think one of the things that I would say that I wish I had said in the episode is that when we start talking about things like robot rights, I think that a lot of people's knee-jerk response is that's just ridiculous. Like, why, of course, robots don't deserve rights. And I think often many of the arguments that they present in defense of that kind of position is unfortunately underinformed, which is why the defenses are not that convincing. But what I want to say is that the fact that you even engage that question is evidence that you think this is a possibility. And so in the episode, I brought up this quote or in the interview with David Gunkel, I brought up this quote by Jean-Paul Sartre, where he says, in order to treat a man like a dog, you first have to recognize that he's a man. And I said that I think that one of the things that we've seen in our own US history is that the denial of rights has always been legislated, predicated, and then subsequently legislated on a kind of implicit recognition that the others to whom rights were being denied were deserving of rights, or at least were deserving of the consideration, does this person deserve rights or not? And so I think that, my new strategy going forward, and I think this episode really helped me kind of articulate this, is that if you can even have an impassioned argument with me about why robots don't deserve rights, that's already evidence that you think that this is a question worth considering. I mean, like if I came up to you and said, should chairs have rights? You wouldn't even have a conversation with me about it. Or should rocks have rights? But there is something different about robots. And even people who want to say robots, don't deserve rights already recognize that. And so maybe going forward, I think that's a good place to start, is that you already recognize that robots, again, speaking broadly as intelligent machines, are different than non-human animals, than inorganic objects or nature in general. And maybe that's just a good place to start going forward.
Yeah, I'm already working on my ethnic slur for robots. I'm trying to figure out. Because
are you going to call them Lees? Johnsons?
Because if you get the rights, you got to get the burden, right? You got to get the burden along with the right. No, that's fascinating. Rick, what are your thoughts about this? Your afterthoughts?
Sort of following up on that, and it was an issue that both David Gunkel brought up and Lee brought up, and I wished we had pursued it a little bit further, is that, Lee, I think you were very forceful in your worry about enslaving, either accidentally or on purpose, a being that we will come to regret, or that enslavement is a moral failure. And I think that's right. And I think that's an important thing to keep in front of our eyes. But you and David both raised this issue. I think you called it, Lee, an imaginary, right? And you compared the robot, the alien, and there was a third one I can't remember. The monster. And we kind of let that drop, but I think a lot of these discussions, more so from the people who want to deny rights to robots, they're focused on the fact that if we expand rights or give rights, not even expand, because these are not human rights, if we give rights to robots, we're a little bit less special. And so a lot of this discussion emerges from out of a panic that we're losing as humans our own uniqueness. And I think, Lee, you and I, because we were kibitzing during a spet paper recently, you and I are a little bit suspicious of that uniqueness to begin with. But maybe then the next step of that is, not only are we worried that we're about to lose our uniqueness, but we're also worried that a lot of what we do is actually just algorithmic. And that frightens us.
It's interesting that that seems to be the same sort of fear that drives, and then we've had the conversation about the white working class and white consciousness, right? And it seems that's a very parallel sort of anxiety, right? You know, you've got what 2,000 years of articulating the sort of almost cosmological uniqueness, right, of Homo sapiens sapiens, and now you've got all these sort of factors say, yeah, maybe, are you sure? Maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Right, and then that's a deep worry.
Yeah.
I would. What was I going to say? I wish that I had said. To be honest, I want to thank Lee for this topic, because I normally don't think about this stuff. I mean, to be honest, not like but it's just not on my radar. You know, my level of engagement or thinking about robotics is being pissed off at my iPhone because I haven't, done the latest update. So I want to thank you for seriously putting that, on the plate before me and really, offering a very sort of filling meal, right?
Also, Charles, it's pretty clear from the recording issues you've been having that your computer hates you.
And for good reason. If you don't clean out your pet's sort of litter box, it's going to hate you too. So I'm going to do much better about sort of clearing out the old files. I'm losing storage space by the second. But I want to thanks for this opportunity. It was really a great conversation, and like I said, it was something very new to my thinking. There's some very bold and challenging questions that you sort of confronted me with. And I have to think, well, am I sort of experiencing this unconsciously, this type of anxiety about holding on to a sense of uniqueness? Though I think I did admit in the episode that I was sort of like Hamlet, like, what is this quintessence of dust to me?
Yeah,
right?
You did.
So I'm very sort of ambivalent about the construct, right, of the human or the Homo sapien, if you will. But I enjoyed it. It's opened up a lot of questions for me, and it's given me certainly some new things to read.
Oh, good. So now you can continue with your closing.
So, and in conclusion, my fellow panelists, now I want to say that it's been a great season, Hotel Bar Sessions. Thank you for inviting us to participate in season 2. I'm looking forward to season 3. I think the Afterthoughts sessions are brilliant and amazing. I'm glad people can see sort of the community that we've built between the three of us. And I'm extremely excited about season 3.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in season 3. We'll take a short 3-week break, and then we'll be back with a whole new slate of topics. So thanks again, guys. This was a great season.
No, thank you, Lee. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.